The My overall research is interested in the display discourse practices of new technology, specifically under the name of interactivity, which analyze in the context of a museum, which I analyze in relation to museums' interpretation and practices and their audiences. So I examine the notion of interactivity and the impact upon audience experiences in the museum of the 21st century. And I examine these assumptions that interactivity indeed produced a greater involvement in participatory activity. I investigate these experiences through the two main examples and the relationship, the relationship of the exhibit to the body, space, immersion, affect. These theoretical frameworks will be tested and elaborated through the in-depth analysis, empirical analysis of the two case studies in museums based in London, and they both have integrated the notion of interactivity in their exhibition programs. The two case studies involve the modern galleries in the Museum of London and the High Arctic installation exhibited in the National Maritime Museum. I aim to theorize the museum concept's shift and negotiation from a negotiation of its identity through notions of affective experience, reason, discussion on the movements towards spaces, embodiment, and audiences. Interactivity under the new technologies offers a solution that seems to support this shift. So, also recently, the museum have been conceptualized as an adaptive medium with adaptation to the requirements of the time. According to Parry and Sayer, as discipline discourses and taxonomies change, so do museums. Jean-Paul Martinon, in his essay on the museum and restlessness, discusses the future of the museum, with its future to come into consideration with the unrevealing of temporality, becoming an occurrence or an event that can never form or prefigure a closure, the death of the museum, or a presence, this stable and identifiable museum. Interactivity, it is a very questionable concept and has been increasingly used in the museum spaces in relation to participation, co and multi-participation, social engagement, learning, multisensory experiences, and social interaction. And there are several ways which has been approached and explored. For example, Honecker discusses the field of interactivity through specifically touch interfaces and the allowance of interaction of visitors with some part of the museum, discovering new experience. Falk and Dirken, they add in the literature the relationship with technologies with engagement and learning. Von Len and Heath, they coming from an art marketing discipline, and analyze extensively interaction and technologies in museum, specifically with a specific interest in social interaction. Jenny Kidd explored the assumed increased social engagement observed by participation, co and malparticipation of people, especially when individuals and groups communicate with one another around the content. There is all this word, I suppose, that are familiar to all of us in terms of the new technologies and the museum. And the interactive design in the museum is ranging from different, from computer interactives, multi-touch interfaces, mixed interactive systems such as augmented reality, tangible user interfaces, or tangible interactives, etc., and much more, recognizing materiality in new ways. The first example is the Modern Galleries in the Museum of London, and it was conducted with my supervisor as well as in collaboration with the engineering department. And so the study did suggest that more attention should be paid to the uses of notions of interactivity within the museum setting. It showed that there is still an unclear difference between interactives and interaction. Also the fact that there is an interaction between people and the artifacts, but most important, there is interaction between people, other people, and artifacts. There is a difference between I suppose the computer interactives allow only one person to engage with it, and the bigger ones, such as the picture here, which allow a multi-participation within the same table, to have more people using it. Um, the study highlighted also the argument's validity that the audience should make sense beyond just an interactive as a standalone interpretative tool, and encouraged and enabled to understand the encounters within the whole framework of the museum and their museum visitors, as well as more questions emerged regarding the element of affect and user experiences. And you can see how in terms of the research. And the number of group interviews and observation, as well as a lot of audio recordings, which kind of revealed spontaneous reaction, when people they were placed within on the top of the exhibits, and you have these natural reactions of people when using the interfaces. There are some examples, some pictures on the different. We looked into the 4 or 5 different exhibits in the museum. So there's some example of that, with one of the most impressive, I suppose, this one, which is the Capital Concern, and deals with problems in London. So basically, the visitor has to touch one of the floating elements on the screen, and then questions come up, the visitor replies, and once she replied, then you get a percentage of what other people have said, which was a very interesting and exciting element that came from the replies, the fact that they had the communication virtually with other visitors, so the polling system really worked. And then there is something like that, which is much more one person use, and there are plenty of them in the museum, and this specific one shows different pictures from different areas of London. The struggle is it's a map where you can use and can see the poverty in different areas of London as well. So it relates to struggle and the classes. The the second example is the High Arctic, the High Arctic installation, which was the first exhibition at the new offering in the National Maritime Museum, which opened in July 2011. So the museum wanted to take itself in a new strategic directions, and the use of a big audiovisual installation as their first exhibition in that space seemed to enable to explore this new direction. So the installation looks at a possible future of the Arctic landscape, encouraging questioning and understanding of our relationship with the world around us. And I suppose one of the interesting facts for me was that this installation have no photographs, no touchscreens, no information panel, but the visitors is welcomed in the space with given a torch, a ultraviolet torch, as an extension of their body, to explore the environment and reveal different elements on the column themselves, the column that you see, as well as there were like different interactive floors, 4 of them, which you could also use the torch and interact with it. The exhibition plays a lot with light, sounds, and shifting in intensity and color. All my interest also derives from the fact that both museums use similarly the notion of interactivity in terms of moving from the traditional museum towards a more progressive self, aiming to create this constant movement and engagement. Again, here I'm not gonna play it now. I think that you can just have a look. There is the video of the installation, which will give you probably a better idea of how what the exhibition looks like and the intensity of it, the soundscape used, the poems. There is poem used on the space, which provides a kind of narrative, a pretty fragmented one, as it does not really tell a story, just uses fragmented histories, uses the stories of polar bear, the stories of ice. It is much more I suppose abstract than just representative. Uh, when um, when we experience those artifacts exhibits, we don't simply see or read them. We do engage them with our body, and an interesting element for me was the fact that it came out from the result as well that the encounter of the visitor, it's beyond just intellectual engagement. Our understanding if is somehow more, it was felt, it seems to be somehow more felt, more perceived rather than just comprehended. um, Again, technologies have been approached from different research, and one of the main as a key answer to remodel the relationships and enhance the audience experiences. So this is um, different examples of exhibition who use the idea of interactivity and a lot of technological tools to enhance these relationships. In terms of the Museum of London, I suppose touch, because due to the fact that the majority of their exhibits are related to touch screens, touch comes into play in the response of the audience very strongly, and it seems that it offers this immediacy, this directness to this experience, particularly where it's used to the digital technologies, also due to the familiarity that we have with, I suppose, iPhone and iPad, etc. Zimmer and Jeffries also question the fact that what will be apart from the aspect of preservation that makes the museum so keen on restrictions such as do not touch, and she suggests that knowledge is something that is waiting to be awakened by our fingerprints. So there is a shift from the visual element with the objects to a tactile and multisensory one. The appreciation of the role of touch with the museum space has blossomed. And the differentiation is argued to arise from the element of immediacy due to intense sensations, affect, pleasure, or pain that is added to our engagement with technology, with experience manifested to more parts of the real world. Um, The interactivity in the museum has brought to the conception of touch to a different level, where you just with the slight tap, the user is allowed to access information, discover world of past and future, come closer to other people's histories, and to other people as well as history. In a way, interactivity in touch has come very close, and it requires closer investigation. In the modern museum environment, certainly more technologically friendly, are embraced enthusiastically interfaces with finger-friendly touch points. And this is the capital concerns touch interface in a close-up. As I said, you just do touch the figure, and you have different problems, questions in regards to London that come that appear. Apologies. And this is the struggle interface again, and it's pretty interesting because you have the one touchscreen which it wouldn't say that allows more than two people, but then the fact that there is also the visual element around, just the map around, allows the kind of social interaction to occur in different ways. And this is the kind of classic touch interface, I suppose, and again in the Museum of London. Going to the National Maritime Museum, the installation looks at climate change, it's important to mention that the museums um, are forms of debate and unquestionably should include social and controversy issues. And similarly, the Museum of London deals with problems of London, this ongoing changes, and the National Maritime Museum deals with climate change, also a very significant and urgent issue. So, like, a large proportion of mass media in terms of climate change focuses on the dissemination of information to passive audiences rather than communicate the complexities in order to encourage and stimulate climate change action. And stimulating this action, it requires participation and engagement, not only just functional knowledge transmission and providing audience with some information that they already feel comfortable with, they are aware with it. I suppose as well, environmental scientists and theorists do call for creative artists to engage with these issues, communicate to the wider audiences the problematics of cultural issues, of cultural change. So the museum, in a way, did commission the artist and brought together Cape Farewell to who before producing the exhibition, what Cape Farewell does brings together the artist, which was in that case Matt Clark, a poet, the sound engineer, and the scientist. They send them in an exhibition, and aiming to create a discussion within the expedition, within the travel, and when they come back, they produce a response on their experience. And this is some of their kind of background images. This was not shown in the exhibition. Was the background images on their expedition. This is the area that the expedition took place. A closer look on how the installation looks like. As you see, these are different interactive pools, and this is the UVA. This is the UVA light, where the visitors, by just showing the light, they kind of reveal different information that are in the sculptures, mainly name of ice that they have been melted. This interactive pool, I suppose this was one of the most powerful for the visitors. It came up a lot as you, with the torch, you break the ice, and it created the sensation of power and guilt and enjoyment. So related to the metaphor that we do affect climate change, and we possibly even enjoy it sometimes with something that happens in that sense. And this is more the wind flow and the snow. So this is a picture again from the High Arctic installation. In a way, through the on-site research, High Arctic installation and its reframing of representation through interactivity and immersion reveals a powerful initial approach to the social issue of climate change, as well as the human and non-human alliances. And encounters with individual knowledge, emotions, bodily movement provoke thoughts and ways of knowing about climate change. So actions on matters of climate change can be intrigued by this rich, deep, and immersive environment, with immersiveness diminishing the distance of the individual or group with the potentiality of future events. These are some the main themes that revealed from both case studies. The element of social engagement and interaction, emotional engagement was really strong. The personal way, physical and social interaction, the exhibition narrative, elements of learning, as well as problematics of usability. The majority of the time, if we also think specifically, if we think about the touchscreen interfaces, they did break. People had issues on using them, but usability in the sense of how, of familiarity, of how the knowledge of the visitors in relation to each of those exhibits. So going back to the encounter, to the visitors encountering this immersive environment related to climate change, Simon O'Sullivan defines encounter as something in the world that forces think. So he argues that unlike representation that reinforces comfortable habits and thoughts, encounter by means of its affective force, certainly with some degree of intensities, emotional engagement, stimulates the need to comprehend, and that can contribute to the disruption of habits towards action. So High Arctic installation and its abstraction and its channel to representation images of Arctic and climate change factual event allows cognitive diversion and the absorption of the audience in the conversation of environmental issues. So events and histories touch the audience through those environments, through those exhibits, bringing distance experiences closer to our skins and body through touch or through movement, creating an emotional response, an affective change of investments of being touched. Um, Overall, also what emerges as important in the interfaces, if we think of the museum of if you think of the Museum of London, is the experience of optical and affect, which certainly needs to be taken into account. When the exhibits are properly designed and add the aspect of touching as emotional experience, they allow users sharing learning experience in the museum, bring history and meaning of the collection to life. The excitement that exists on the touchscreen interfaces become obvious through the responses of the research, as well as the acceleration on the use of touch sensitive technologies in our everyday life. So Hein argues that we love simple, clean interfaces that computer generate, the way that the complexity and ambiguity of them is reduced, clothed under color and geometrical shapes, and our affair with them is deeper than aesthetic fascination and deeper of play with senses. Obviously, there is space in the field of multi-touch interface for the museum to conduct um, more research and in relation to the overall idea of interactivity. As the area of interest that I recognize as needed to be explored involve affect, body, social interaction, and learning of the visitors in the museum space, which facilitate these multi-touch interfaces, the private and collective participation of the user um, in relation to information patterns of the visitors in the space. Um, Similarly, the engagement in the high Arctic installation, it seems like a good it seems like a positive start of positive emotional engagement, strong emotional engagement on making people think about climate change, as it brings them to a very close personal relationship with this issue. However, the whole discussions engages with the preliminary result of the studies, which allows capacity for further consideration and analysis. Um, Throughout the process, the study will deepen on the dilemmas and complications as expressed by the audience in relationship to notions and practices of interactivity, with the intent to add to the overall analysis of the progressing connection of interactivity and museum as cultural space. The the paper is considering emerging attitudes experimented by cultural institutions such as museums, and how they strengthen the relationship um, of the audience with unfinished and ongoing social matters, as well as providing platform for transforming the public to a more active one. However, we should be aware that making audience active do require from the museum to engage them in a holistic participation involving interactivity along with the debates, forum, events, and other interventions. Thank you very much.